This is the biggest glass enclosed area in Europe.
Great Court developed when it was opened in 2000.
These are the carvings that were taken from the Acropolis. Circa 400 BC. Well, it seems like everybody just hangs out in the street and drinks. All right. Saturday night in London, huh? Okay, we're staying here at the Premier Inn, which is next to the Anchor, established 1615. And if you look over here, you can see St. Paul's Cathedral. Alright, well, this is the infamous Piccadilly Square. And during the day, the fountain isn't going, the Coca-Cola sign's gone.
Yeah, but show them the horses behind the
Alright.
Maybe we should go to McDonald's and have a coffee. I know they.
St. Benjamin here. It's a Sir Benjamin Hall, H-A-L-L, as in the room, Hall, Benjamin Hall, who supervised the construction of the clock tower in 1858. So he was intimately associated with the building. But also, physically, he resembled a bell, short and tubby, short and round, short due to genetics, not help your height. Tubby, probably blame his wife. His wife is an excellent cook, and she published cookery books. The first printed book of cooking was her first publication. But before she went into print, she tried out every recipe on her husband beforehand. So he got a little overweight with all this rich food, small white wine, short and round, resembled a bell, gave his name to the bell inside the clock tower. So Big Ben, Sir Benjamin Hall, the bell inside the clock tower. The clock itself is the most powerful and accurate public striking clock in the world. When it tells the time, rest assured it's correct. So now's your chance to get your watches correct. I'm indicating. Remember, that's got the bell inside Big Ben. And then to your right-hand side, the Victoria tab that stores parliamentary records. And that's slightly taller than the clock tower, 323 feet high. Clock tower is 316 feet in total. The two buildings mark the full length of Parliament. And this is the building where the laws of this country are debated and enacted. Now, we call it the House of Parliament, but its official name is the New Palace of Westminster. Palace, because it is still legally in parts a royal palace. Part of the building is still used for royal functions. It stands on the site of a building that was built as a royal residence, lived in by our monarchs from the 1050s till 1512. They then vacated the building and moved into a new palace called Whitehall. So after 1512, this ceased to be a royal residence, was given over to parliamentary business. So, our monarchs haven't lived in a building on this site for centuries. Nonetheless, it is still in parts a royal allowed by Her Majesty the Queen to die inside the building. You are not allowed to die here. If anyone does, they're taken to the nearest hospital and declared dead on arrival at the hospital. You can't officially die here. Now, I don't like being told straight about understanding why, so I ask. Let me explain to you. Because it's a royal palace in parts, then you have to have a Queen's coroner to officially certify any deaths that take place in this building. There is no Queen's coroner, and the Queen has no intention of appointing one. Her strategy over the last few years has been to reduce her expenditure because she gets a burden on the public. Last year, she cost the British taxpayer 69 pence a pound. This year it's down to 62 pence. So she doesn't want to burn that place. So she won't appoint any new staff members. So no Queen's coroner. Therefore, no one can officially die in the building. No one can actually die here. Now, the reason why it's called the New Palace is much easier to Lady James, Margaret Thatcher, Melville Bragg, Alan Sugar, Norman Foster are famous examples of life peers. Now, the House of Lords has to consider all legislation, Charter comes out, and it's named after the King who commissioned it to be built, King Henry VII, the man with who's the father of Henry VIII, the man with the 6 wives. And Henry VII, his wife Elizabeth of York, are buried within this chapel that was consecrated in 1528. Now, what is interesting about the architecture is the style. It's Gothic Perpendicular, and that is the style of Parliament. Charles Barry, the main architect of Parliament, used this building as his main source of inspiration for the design of Parliament. If you look at the chapel, look across the road, you'll see automatically similarities between the two buildings. On the walls are emblems of the Tudor dynasty. You've got the dog, that's the greyhound, the House of Richmond, to which the Tudors belonged. You've got the fleur-de-lis, their claims to the Kingdom of France. You've got the grid, looks like a waffle machine. That is actually the Tudor portcullis. And you've got the rosette, which is the Tudor rose. The rose and the portcullis were their favourite symbols, because both put together were visual puns, what we call rebuses, on their surname Beaufort. Margaret Beaufort was the mother of Henry VII, and Beaufort is a French word. There are 2 syllables. You take each syllable, translate it from the French into English and apply each translated word to each emblem. Bow means beautiful, a rose is beautiful. Fort means strong, a portcullis is a...
Here we have the Abbey. The Abbey was disbanded when England broke away from the Catholic Church. And here's Westminster Abbey. That's a church here. And when they ran out of funds, they took funds from this abbey to build Westminster. Thus comes the saying, robbing from Peter to pay Paul.
Over to the Tower of London. It's now maintained by English Heritage Museum. For a small charge, you can go inside and learn more about the history of the Palace of Westminster. And then across the road is Victoria Town. It stores parliamentary records, some 3 million historic documents like the death warrant of Charles I and the Confession of Guildford, who was one of the plotters who planned to stop Parliament state. Westminster Abbey. To come to services, you enter by this door, and this is where the coffin of Diana, Princess of Wales, was taken. A funeral in September 1997. She's not buried here, she's buried at Althorpe in Northamptonshire, the country residence of her brother, Lord Spencer. And she didn't marry here, she married at St. Paul's Cathedral. The funeral service took place here in 1997. Above the archway, the doorway, are 10 statues representing Montmartre Christian Church. Those initially have always been empty. They were filled with statues in 1998. All the names are given at the base of each statue. There's also a list by the railings across the road. But among the number is Oscar Romero, the last to be assassinated in 1980, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and Martin Luther King. And the column in front of the church, which has a statue of St. George killing the dragon, patron saint of England, is a war memorial to former boys of Westminster School who were killed in the Crimean War against Russia of 1855 and the Indian Mutiny of 1850. A clever way was to tax houses which had over a certain number of windows. People thought that is daylight robbery, hence the expression, and so they blocked out the extra windows to avoid the tax. And the column next to the blocked out window at the top has letters, public shelters under vaults, in vaults under pavement. And basically down in the basement where extra rooms are now, they were coal cellars where coal was stored. In the past, everyone had open fires, so everyone used coal to light the fires, and that's where they stored the coal. And during the Second World War, the government had extensive powers. I mean, I do more about that on the 2 walks I do. I do wide variety of water fowl, black swans, white swans, canaries, coots, and the famous 5 pelicans of St. James's Park. And the area is a mixture of landscape.
St. James Park.
Trees, and then the very formal flag. When the Queen's code, it's the Royal Standard flies, it's the flagpole. When she's not, it's the Union flag. That's the flag flying today because the Queen isn't here in the summer. She goes on holiday to Scotland.
Go then.
This is the only day you can stand on this road without any royal permission. Because the Street the Mall is shut to traffic on a Sunday, except for bicycles and police vehicles, etc. It's generally shut to traffic. And at one end you've got Admiralty Arch, the arch that leads out on Trafalgar Square, where we end our walk. And then in the other direction, you've got the Victoria Memorial with the Golden Angel, with a statue of Queen Victoria beneath the angel to commemorate the fact that she was the first monarch to live in Buckingham Palace. And then behind her is the building of Buckingham Palace itself. This road here is called the Mall. It's spelled M-A-L-L, pronounced Mal, not Mall, but Mal. And it comes from a French word, pell-mell. This was a game, a cross between golf and croquet, popularised here in the 17th century. It's a raw route, it's used by the soldiers to and from the guard change, and also used at the end of the London Marathon, which is the finishing line of the London Marathon, which is run every April. Now, the guard change is now on its winter season, I'm sad to say. August, 1st of August to the end of April is their winter season. They only have a daily guard change from the beginning of May to the beginning of August.
بديتي ولا بتصورين متى؟ بديتي؟ تراجع شوية. تعالي هناك نفس الهنا.
Estaba dient algo, quan s'ha girat cap allà. I l'altra manera...
على وجه خالي مخلد صح.
És que li parla? A la gira.
تدوخت اللي بالمدينة هذا شو لا تفكر.
Now, here we have ahead of us Buckingham Palace, and always, even now, the thousands of people watching the soldiers in the courtyard, where the Queen lives. This is very much her weekday working palace. She loves Windsor Castle, that's her favourite palace, and she relaxes at weekends there. But this is her working palace. This is where she receives ambassadors, heads of state, where she has all the meetings and the giving honours to people, royal banquets. And the great thing is when the Queen goes on holiday in Scotland in the summer, that's when they open up the palace to the public, every day of the week. And so to the end of September you can visit Buckingham Palace, the staterooms. I cannot recommend them more highly. It's wonderful. I went to the preview. Tourist guides got a chance to go in free with a guest, and it's wonderful. I mean, there's always a changing exhibition each year, so even if you've been in before, it's worth going. And the other tip is that when you leave, have your ticket stamped as you leave the gardens, because that makes it valid for a year. So you could always come back within the next 12 months when the exhibition has changed in the next year to get another free entrance to Buckingham Palace. But you must keep it of being misled. Well, these would be nice short and sweet stops now, but we're facing the gatehouse, which is the oldest part of Buckingham Palace. And this building dates to the 1530s, used as a hunting lodge by Henry VIII when he hunted in the park nearby. And then the building was extended over the years, and from 1698 to 1837, where our monarchs lived. Now, they still have accommodation here. Princess Beatrice, the eldest daughter of Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, has accommodation here while she's studying at Goldsmiths College in London, history and the history of ideas. Princess Anne has an apartment here, and the Duke of Gloucester and his wife, the Queen's cousin. So accommodation is still provided for the royal family, but I'm not sure what the long-term future holds for the building. And then across the road, we have the street called Pall Mall. If we go to the very end, we'll be on Trafalgar Square. We're going to be a little bit off the beaten path to make our way to Trafalgar Square. Pall Mall line with gentlemen's clubs, and we're going to use an alleyway which will take us behind these buildings into a very exclusive area called St James's, characterised by pictures, art.
Oh, Trafalgar Square.
And this is the church where you could get the etchings.
Yeah.
Although at this point, I don't know if we're going to do it. I'm not sure we have time, but this is where you get the etchings.
I should be very brief, ladies and gentlemen, because I know I'm overrunning a lot. But this is Trafalgar Square, literally central London. The datum point from where all distances to and from London are measured is the south side of Trafalgar Square. And it's named after the sea battle, the Battle of Trafalgar, fought on the Spanish coast, Trafalgar, on the 21st of October 1805 between the British and the French neighbours. The British won, led to victory by Lord Nelson. He was killed in the battle, buried in St Paul's Cathedral and commemorated by Nelson's column. The tall column with a statue 3 times life size of Lord Nelson on top. People gather here to look at the fountain, to feed the pigeons, to welcome the new year, because there's our timekeeping piece in the distance over there. And they pedestrianised this road here, this pavement here, 4 or 5 years ago. This was a roadway, so to get into the square you had to cross the road until they pedestrianised this area. And this has freed up all this space for the public. They have pop concerts here, they have live relays at the opera, from the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden, the Olympic Games, the World Cup. So it really has been a place for people. Behind us the National Gallery, one of the finest art galleries in the world, paintings of 12th and 1900s. These were crosses used to mark the funeral route of Eleanor of Castile. She was the wife of Edward I. She died in 1290 outside Nottingham in the Midlands, Middle England. And her husband, the king, was so distraught at her death that he ordered her buried in Westminster Abbey. Her funeral to be held there, so the coffin has been transported to Westminster Abbey. And every place where it rested overnight, there was a cross erected in her honour. And this is a replica of the final one for Westminster Abbey. And it's a corruption Charing Cross of Cher Reine, dear Queen. So Charing Cross, Cher Reine. Apparently policemen used to tell visitors that it was the spar of a church that was sunken underground. If they gave him a tenner, he'd give him a tour of the crypt. What he did when he got his money, I don't know, but not really anything to do with the war, but there we are. But anyway, Charing Cross Station. Now, first of all, just in general about the station, if you got inside this station, or indeed Waterloo Station, or Victoria Station, on the 1st of September 1939, you would have almost certainly encountered groups of school children wearing luggage labels, with their names on the labels and the school to which they belonged, carrying their gas masks and the provisions they would require for the day's journey. And this is the sort of photograph you might have seen. And not just at train stations, but buses as well. And these are the children being evacuated to live with families in the countryside. It was a government-sponsored scheme which was codenamed Operation Pied Piper. Now, in the lead up to the war, there was a lot of research done into the implications of aerial bombing of cities and towns. And because though we're quite a small country, we have a dense population in urban areas. The statistics were very scary indeed. And that is why the government urged the public. They couldn't force them to. In a democracy, you have to have the people on your side. But they urged them, if they were school age, to allow parents who lived in the city or the town to allow their children to live with families in the countryside. And the way it would work is they travel together in their school groups. They'd have their education together in the school groups, and they'd go to a village hall, some communal centre, where the volunteers who'd agreed to take on children would pick up their charges. One drawback of the scheme was they hadn't prearranged who was going to stay where. One adult who was a child evacuee, he grumbled later, oh, inevitably cherry picking was involved. So any children who looked like Shirley Temple lookalikes, angelic faces, butter wouldn't melt in the mouth expressions, well, they got chosen first. And if there was a family that had a farm, they'd choose a tall, strapping, strong lad. If there was a family that had a large number of children of their own, they'd go for the oldest girls. So they obviously had a role model in mind for the children they chose. I feel very sorry for the eldest sibling of a large group of children being evacuated, told by their parents before they left, make sure you stick this war out together. Don't let any of you get separated. Easier said than done. You're a family of 5 or more to find one family who could look after all of you together. It was a popular bomb shelter, and this was a very popular bomb shelter during the war. It would give you better protection against the secondary effects of the bombs and landing. and up to 500 people could shelter in the crypt of St Martin in the Field Church. People from all walks of life, business people, prostitutes, down and out the homeless, could all rub shoulders in the crypt of the church, and they could enjoy light refreshments during the hours of shelter. They could play table tennis, ping pong, card games, and just amuse themselves by telling stories, anecdotes and jokes. And the rector here, Patrick McCormack, he would tell tales of his experience during the First World War. He won the Distinguished Service Medal for bravery. Of his father, who rode in the Cambridge, the Oxford-Cambridge boat crew on the Cambridge side in 1856. So he had many good stories to tell those who sheltered in the crypt to while away the long hours. People went to Chislehurst at night time and they came back from Chislehurst in the morning. So the reverse of what you'd expect. And the reason why we were going out to Chislehurst at night was that Chislehurst, which is about 10 miles out of central London, has ancient caves, historic caves. And they had chosen to shelter in those caves. A bit like sheltering the tube, but safer because you're out of central London. And 5,000 people chose to shelter in the Chislehurst caves in Kent. Now first of all, it was word of mouth. You know, some people went there, they told their friends, well, this is a good place to go, and they followed suit. And at first, really, because it was just, literally making your own decision to go there, the situation, the conditions were very, very bare, so very Spartan. So people just slept on the sandy floors of the caves, and they used as illumination torches or candles, so very, very primitive. Then when the local council, Bromley, realised that so many people were using it as a shelter, they brought in better provisions. So more blankets and buckets to use as makeshift bathing facilities. They even had a hospital set up there for basic operations to take place in the caves. And they brought in members of ENSA. ENSA is the Entertainment National Services Association. And they entertained everywhere, abroad, the troops abroad, in the factories, worked in their lunch hour, have entertainment provided by ENSA. And also, when many of the professional actors left London, the London stage, and went to provinces where it was safer to perform in regional theatre, well, they took the places of the professional actors on the London stage. The only trouble was that supply was outstripped by demand, and they did spread themselves a bit thin. Their talent could leave a bit to be desired. And that is the reason why people said that the real definition of ENSA didn't stand for Entertainment National Services Association, but more appropriately, every night something awful. In the night hours, staff normally on a rota basis would do fire watch duty. Because incendiary bombs, unlike high explosives, where if they exploded that was it, couldn't do much about them. If they didn't, then the Royal Engineers dealt with the UXBs. But the incendiary bombs could be dealt with, you knew how to deal with them when you were there. And one problem was that 29th of December 1940, when the Germans that night attacked the city of London, many of the buildings were locked up. It was a Sunday, the buildings had been abandoned, and a lot more buildings were destroyed than needed to be the case had there been that sort of system in operation. But in the case of important buildings like Westminster Abbey, Parliament, Tower of London, well, even before war broke out, they had training prepared for that eventuality. And so they always gave priority to protecting those buildings, but despite that, they could only do so much. And there were two occasions when quite serious damage was sustained to both buildings. The first was 27th September 1940. A bomb exploded outside the courtyard of Parliament, where we had the statue of Richard Lionheart on horseback with his sword uplifted, and it caused such an explosion that the statue jumped off its pedestal, the backside of the horse was damaged, the windows of Parliament leading down to Westminster Hall, St Stephen's porch, were shattered. And Richard the Lionheart, the most visible damage apart from the window, was that poor Richard was left with a bent sword, a wonky sword. And you may just be able to make out the wonky sword there. The windows were replaced after the war with memorial windows by Ninian Comper to commemorate members of both the House of Lords and Commons. And then point out to KFC. And actually the telephone box is in the way, but what we'll have to do, you'll have to look at it when we move off from here. But just next to KFC, there is a building that has gold lettering, and that says Café de Paris. So even if you can't see it now, don't worry. When we go in this direction, you'll see it as we walk past. But rest assured it's there. It's a modern nightclub, but during the Second World War, it was a very exclusive venue indeed, down in the basement. The ground level was the Cinema Rialto, Then down in the basement, the Café de Paris. Maurice Chevalier, Greta Garbo, regular guests of the Café de Paris. The manager was Martin Poulton, and he used to boast, this is the safest place to dance in London. The reason he made the boast was obvious, it was down in the basement, so he assumed better protection against bombs. But the trouble is that nothing could protect you against direct hit. The bombs could penetrate many layers. And tragically, on the 8th of March 1941, 2 high explosives penetrated the building of the Cinema Rialto. They went down into the basement where the Café de Paris is. It had been in full swing, it was night time, and the band was performing, and the leader of the band was a man called Ken Snake Hips Johnson. He was on stage, he was killed instantly, as were other members of the band. Up to 80 people died that night. And what adds to the tragedy, it's a bit like the Titanic, the glitz and the glamour of the before, and the dust and the debris of the aftermath. There's a double spread of the bombing of the Café de Paris. What adds to the tragedy is that some passers-by of unscrupulous character, they realised that a very wealthy establishment had been bombed, and there'd been people with money down the basement. They went downstairs and they stole the purses, wallets, jewellery from people who were either dead or still alive but dying. And many of those who were captured, arrested, were punished very severely for their crimes. And then I'll talk about it off-site where it's quieter, but Piccadilly Circus was one of the public designated bomb shelters. And here's a photograph of people sheltering in the tube at Piccadilly Circus. But I'll talk about the bomb shelters at our next stop, where it's a bit quieter. So across the road over to where the Clydesdale Bank is, go down past Pizza Hut, so turn left, go down past Pizza Hut, and the first turning on the left, on the right hand side, sorry, will be Tesco's, and that's Jermyn Street. I'll go halfway along Jermyn Street, and I'll talk about Piccadilly Circus tube station there, and also about how Jermyn Street fared during the war. It's easier if I go to a quieter location. Had to be convinced that Germany had taken on board the fake signals we were sending out to them, that we were going to land our troops at the Pas de Calais, rather than our real plan, the Normandy beaches. And what gave us reassurance about that was the use of the Colossus machine, a giant machine like a giant computer, that cracked the Lorenz code. And this was the code used by Hitler at highest command level. We talk a lot about the Enigma code, which was obviously a crucial part in the war, but there was also the Lorenz code. And without the Colossus machine, it would take several weeks to decipher a message in the Lorenz code. With the machine, a couple of hours. And that machine deciphered messages which made it clear to us that they had indeed accepted, taken on board the plans, and so with confidence we could land on the Normandy beaches, launch the D-Day landings. And there's only one Colossus machine left. There were originally about 10 of them, only one now survives, lovingly restored by Tony Sales, a former MI5 spy catcher, and that has now been put on display in the Bletchley Park Museum, where you can see the Enigma code and the deciphering, all the work that went on there. In his costume, Scots, the Irish and the Welsh. In their uniform of the First World War, the ceremonial is the bearskin hats and the red tunics. And after the Second World War, it was extended to include those killed in the Second War as well. It bears shrapnel damage. You look all around, all these pot marks, particularly on the side to the right, all shrapnel damage. Never fill those gaps, because shrapnel was lethal. It could kill people, not necessarily immediately, but later due to infection setting in. So a reminder of the suffering of ordinary people during the war. Then we got the Horse Guards Parade Ground, with the Household Cavalry, to their guard change, and the Horse Guards building, where they're based. And this suffered quite serious bomb damage during the war. The right-hand side, the white stone and red brick building is the Admiralty, and it's still their building. They also own the brown brick building with the ivy creeper to the left, which is called the Citadel. Citadel, C-I-T-A-D-E-L, built in 1940, designed to be a part of the Admiralty, to act as a bunker to stand the weight of a 1,000-pound bomb. So that meant that the fleet, that the Admiralty had direct communication with the fleet during the Second World War. Now, Ian Fleming, who wrote James Bond, he worked at the Admiralty during the war years. He brought forward a lot of ideas that were incorporated into schemes done by the Navy. And it's thought that he based a lot of his characters in his books on people he met during the war years. We think that the model for Miss Moneypenny, his secretary in these stories, was Lady Ristale. Certainly she walked at the Admiralty and was involved in a very clever plot in which Ian Fleming was involved, which was codenamed Operation Mincemeat. Now, after the liberation of North Africa, Churchill knew that the Germans would assume that we would next target Sicily. He said, if only we can put them off their scent and give the impression we're going to invade Greece, that would be perfect. And they came up with a very clever plan, suggested and put forward by Fleming, that if they took a civilian who committed suicide, in this case one who committed suicide by rat poison, and they gave him a new identity as a naval officer. He got a name, Bill Martin. His obituary appeared in the Times newspaper, a naval officer killed in action. They made up a whole life story about him. Every detail had to fit, otherwise if there was anything wrong in the story, then they'd be exposed as a scam. But they made this new person, this new identity. He'd been killed in action, and they put fake invasion plans on his body, that we were going to invade Greece rather than Sicily. The body was put out to sea with the intention to be found by the Germans. They found the corpse, and they found the plans, and they took on board hook, line and sinker, Operation Mincemeat. And that became the subject of the movie, The Man.
First is one as it explains.
When do you admit that there was an air raid coming on? They had codes.
Okay. Millie says this is what would tell them what the weather is like up above.
They had different,
Oh, and this thing,
Yes, they did.
oh, they have little changes.
they were told.
These things would slip out. Okay. By the way, we're in Churchill's bunker area. Prime Minister.
There's no number around here? That's where his private office was, I guess. I'm surprised there's no number around here. So I wonder if this existed before during World War One. I should have asked, it did occur to me to ask that to court.
I'll be down at the other end.
So Andy's outside, just the other side of the road. So I'm not sure whether when they can come back. Sit down.
Waterloo train station, London. We're doing a way out. Yeah.
Hello. Thank you very much. Welcome to you both.
So, the master of my household, this is his right-hand man, looking after things for us today.
So when the king travels, he has about 1,000 people with him, and you may call them all his servants, although some of them are people. But they are all the king's servants, as you are. You are one of the subjects.
I imagine you meant the lowly folk, like him.
Thank you. Thank you for noticing my existence.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. Well, of course, I do very little, sir. I stand there and allow the gentleman of the body to dress me and undress me. So it takes some great time, but I just stand there passing the time of day with one of my gentlemen of my privy closet, and I just will chat to them while I am dressed, sir. How long does it take you? Looking by the judge of it, not that long. I would imagine. Yes. Any other questions? Oh, yes, go on. Well, how did I manage to find you? You've almost answered your question in your question. I mean, not of course, he was a very great servant of mine. And I do miss him greatly. He's long gone now, sadly. And I do miss him. This was his house. He acquired it, madam, from the family. He acquired it hundreds of years previously from the Knights Hospitaller, which originally had a little house on this ground. In fact, if you look on the floor, you see the original pattern laid out there of some of the original walls beneath. Shall we say that he felt that he had let me down in what I consider my great matter, and as a result he made a gift of it to me. Some historians might argue that Woolsey had no intention of giving me a gift, but nevertheless it was a gift that I gladly accepted. And very happy with it too, I will know right now.
Absolutely, I can't wait to spend our honeymoon with you.
We consider it our pleasure palace, and we come away from London to spend time here where the air is fresh and there are no common people about. Yes.
It is a convenient location, madam. You will find palaces like this about 3 hours from every major city. There are many around Paris at this distance. Or 3 hours by barge means one may escape London when one needs to, but also speed back if there is some constitutional crisis which requires your attention. Or anything exciting like that, really.
And there are exciting things to attend to almost every day, are they not, my love?
Very much so.
Yeah. Yes, boy?
How'd you conquer France?
How did I conquer France? Oh, there's a story, boy, eh? Have you got 3 hours to spare? Come and sit at my feet and I'll tell you. Well, shall we say, when I first came to this throne, can you imagine, do you remember when it was 1509? I was a strapping boy, 17 going on 18, tall and broad I was. Rather like you when you get a bit older, you two. Muscle-bound, eager to prove myself. And in 1513, I went to war with the French and won our glorious victory at the Battle of the Spurs. Do you know who that was between? Between us and the French. And our cavalry sent their cavalry spinning from the field. They galloped so fast, all you saw of them was the spurs on their horses. That's why we call it the Battle of the Spurs. That was my most glorious victory. But I'll tell you something else. Next year, I plan to go again to war against the French. Would you come with me, boy? Would you? Eh? Come and be a young boy, the far forefront of the wave of banner or toot a horn or
You
something.
could quite easily wave some sort of banner, could
Good.
you not?
Yes. Will you lay down your life and come and stand with me on the foreign fields, boy? Yes, you see, he's a warlike creature. Well done, madam. You're bringing him up the right way. Where do you live, madam?
Oxford.
Yes, that figures. Yes, they're very warlike, you know.
Yes, yes.
Well, please do not forget that my wife to be here, aside from being a very pretty individual horse, has a tongue in her head that can wrap itself around any question that you might have. If it's something that is occurring to you. Do not keep her standing here with not a thing to say.
I fear that these people have eyes only for you, Grace, and as a good wife to be, but nevertheless, in training for being your wife, I should always allow you to speak first. That fits a wife, does it not? To allow her husband to always speak for her.
You can see the agreement of the women as you say this, madam. They're all not, particularly this couple here. You see that kind of appeals to them, this way of thing. Yes. Any more questions? Go on. Somebody must have one.
They're in awe of your majesty, your grace, they really are.
Look at that little one. That looks like a little bit my daughter. That's your majesty.
I'm gonna go take these back, okay? I'll be with you. Unless you...